Some churches do it. Women are not allowed to speak, and even within the home sometimes you find that women don't have a voice because they are supposed to be so submissive that if the man says jump, you say oh hi, right? And that was not the intent and purpose of the scriptures or the intent of purpose that the Lord had for us.
Hi, Sister Jennifer. How are you today?
I'm great. And you?
I'm wonderful.
Great.
So seeing you again.
It's good to see you too.
Wonderful. We basically embarked on this campaign to stand up, to speak out, violence against women and girls. And I've been thinking since we embarked on this that, it's really a journey, and that as a ministry, we need to speak a little more about why we are doing this campaign. What do you think?
I think so. It's a very important topic, and I think we need to explore it a whole lot to ensure that we reach as many persons as possible.
Yes, and also in reaching persons, we want persons to know that as a woman, violence is not acceptable. As a ministry, we believe in the restoration of women, the refreshing of women, and the renewal. Women are to be restored, refreshed, and renewed for the glory of God. And we believe also that if you are in an abusive situation, it's difficult for you to thrive in that environment. And in order to be restored, you have to be thriving. God did not create us only to survive, but to thrive. And that's why we really strongly believe that this campaign will not only empower our women, but it will be transforming many, many lives. What do you think?
I think so, because the more persons we engage is the more lives we're touching, and the more transformation that we will be expecting.
Wonderful. In launching this campaign, we want to reach a wide cross-section of women, particularly those who are very vulnerable. We know that abuse is not confined to a geographic location or a socio-economic background. And Sister Jennifer, talk a little about the backgrounds that women might believe that is important to know that we're not only targeting this particular group, but it is widespread.
Okay, violence against women knows no boundaries. It cuts across all boundaries, geographical boundaries, ethnicity, race, class, creed, religion, age, everything. And so violence against women, it touches women in every country, every society, all age groups. And so it is very important that as we continue the discussion leading towards restoring, refreshing, and renewing, that we ensure that persons in different areas, not just geographical areas, professional areas, persons of all ages are actually reached with this information.
In terms of the geographic location, we want the women to know that when we speak about the geographic location, we're not confining to a status, but to know that when we speak about this, it speaks within churches,
schools, communities,
right?
Persons who are working, persons who are unemployed, persons who are in between. It touches every life. It knows no boundaries, as I said earlier.
Professionals, you might think, okay, it's only for people who are from a particular socioeconomic background or have average jobs. No, professionals, whether you may be a lawyer, doctor, it touches everyone. And also, we also want to recognize that when you speak about this socioeconomic background, you don't have to be in a particular community. It goes across all regions. And it is something that we have seen where it has affected many, many persons, many, many women. Lives have been snuffed out. And we want to say today, it is time that we stand up and speak out against violence against women and girls.
And we're also encouraging others, not just us, to join this campaign so that you can either stand up and speak out, or you can encourage others to stand up and speak out as well. We are saying by this campaign that violence against women is not acceptable. It is a no-no, and it is something that we have to fight. It's a scourge, and so we have to fight it, not just as women, but we are calling on the men as well, and everyone to ensure that we are engaged in the fight against violence against women and girls.
Okay, whereas we speak about women and girls, and we might say, okay, girls, they're young, they're not exposed to abuse, but what about these young girls who are exposed to abuse? How does it impact on them as a teenager, as an adult, mature adult as they get older in life?
We might think that violence against women does not impact girls that much, but at the level of the United Nations, one of the 12 critical areas coming out of what was considered the Beijing Platform for Action, which was the mother of all conferences held in 1994, there was one critical area called the girl child. And what we realized that the girl child suffer a lot of abuses. Yes, boys do suffer, and we can't ignore that. But girls face some trials that sometimes boys do not face. For example, female genital mutilation. In some countries where they, cut off the genitals of the woman, the young girl, and these things take them through life. It affects them. And we have to understand that even child marriages, in some countries, that also affects the girl child. Young girls are given to these older men so that they marry them, and girls who should be in the educational institutions are now wives, child brides. So these are some of the things that would affect girls, which may not affect boys. But there are other things too, and we have to think like even incest. We have to understand that even within the home setting, a number of girls have been impacted by sexual abuse, incest from either brother, father. I mean, the law doesn't include stepfather, right? But it's a close relationship, and we have to understand that young girls face those things sometimes throughout their life cycle. And now, some of them have reached adulthood, and they are talking about it. And the effects is so long-term that it is even affecting some of them to this, to this age. Mm-hmm. So while we are focusing on women, we have to understand that girls are also abused. Fondling, touching in a bad way, yes. Forced sex, and all of these things on young girls, it impedes their education, it impedes their development, it affects them emotionally. And so going through life, it can even affect them in marital relationships as well, because some of them are afraid of men, mm-hmm. and some of them see every man as an abuser. So we have to understand that when it comes to young girls, we have to try and rescue them even from now. Let them be aware, let them know what to do, let them know that they too, they have a voice and that they can speak out as well.
I like how you mentioned they have a voice, because that is exactly what our theme is. Stand up and speak out. And we want you to know that we are looking at ensuring, one of the things we want is that we want to break the silence.
Definitely.
Break the silence. We need to break the silence.
It must be broken.
Because they find that when the silence in homes or in the communities, because of the stigma, nobody talks about abuse. Or if it is spoken of, it is hush. Or it is treated as a crime. It is not treated as a situation that you need to be spoken. Or you are ashamed to talk about abuse.
It's a taboo subject.
Thank you. So we are breaking the silence. We want to break the cycle. And you mentioned why we need to break the cycle. Our children, our girls, if we do not break the cycle, then you become a promiscuous person. You become rebellion. Your children, your grandchildren, and if in the cycle that is happening, also you are impacted, because you become you are now abused. Then your daughter become find herself in an abusing situation, and she's saying, "But no, nothing is wrong. My mother just went through it. Why can't I not live it through?" Then my daughter becomes find herself in an abusive situation. So we need to break the cycle.
Right, because it's a generational thing sometimes. What we find is that children get abused when they were young, then they grow up, their children get abused, and the cycle continues. So as you said, we have to break the cycle, and we have to say enough is enough, and we are standing up and we are speaking out.
Amen, amen. We're standing up and we're speaking out, but we're breaking the silence. We are breaking the silence, and we are unmasking the pain. Talk about the unmasking of the pain, because that is a tough one, Sister Janira. Yes, the pain can be very hard to deal with, and people don't want to go back and talk about the pain. That's why sometimes they don't want to talk about the situation, because the pain is so severe and real.
I have done several workshops in schools and communities concerning violence against women, and I've spoken to a number of persons. And even while some of them are adults, and it happened to them when they were children, the pain is still there. There's this particular case where a young girl was molested by her brother, and then the brother migrated, and then he did something, and he was deported back to the island. Back in the home, now they were both adults. But what happened, the woman was so fearful, because every time she sees the brother, she remembers the pain and the hurt. And so people relive their experiences daily, because every time you remember something, you go back to what happened to you either one time or over those years, because sometimes it's a one-off incident, and sometimes it is a series of incidents that carries you into adulthood. And even when you're in adulthood, you still realize that the pain is there, and the pain sometimes is so deep that you sometimes don't get over it readily. It takes years and counseling and digging and hacking away of this thing sometimes before it gets, buried for good, so that the woman can live a normal life.
You mentioned hacking and digging and I can include pruning and stripping. And that is why we want to unmask the pain.
We have to unmask the pain because when you are living in a pained situation, what you find is that it affects you. That affects the way how you relate to your children. It affects the way how you relate to others, both men and women. It affects your whole being. So it cuts at the very core of who you are when the pain is there and it is not revealed, it is not dealt with, it is still unmasked. And so we have to unmask the pain. And when I say unmasking the pain, masking takes place in a number of ways. Sometimes women who are abused mask themselves, literally mask themselves with makeup.
So you mask emotionally?
Yes.
You mask physically?
And you mask spiritually too.
And you mask spiritually?
Yes, because sometimes women who are in abusive relationships and they are in the church, and particularly if their spouse is in the church as well, and even if the person is in a leadership position, you have to come out and behave very nice and pious and sweet and good. And then when you go back home, you face the trial of the abuse. So masking takes place in a number of ways. Sometimes you see women and they have on this heavy makeup under the eye and different parts of the body, sometimes because they have been bruised, right? And sometimes also when they snap, at times you realize that emotionally they are paining as well. I remember, not in Jamaica, in a certain country, there's a woman who was always snapping and snapping and snapping at her children, particularly her son. And it was afterwards we discovered that the husband was having an extramarital affair, and the woman was so snappy. And I couldn't understand why she was just getting at her son like that, getting at him. But she was taking out the pain of that she was experiencing with her husband on her son. So we mask in a number of ways, Sister Althea, and we have to help women to unmask.
I just speak about unmasking and masking. What comes to mind? COVID. You remember when we had to mask?
Yes.
Good. So think about you masking, wearing that mask over your mouth, and it was difficult to speak, difficult to communicate. It's the same thing when you're masking the pain because
Yes, because you're hiding everything and it hides your persona. I remember a man telling somebody was talking to him and he says, I can't hear you. And she said, but it is not your ears that the mask is on. But he says, because I am masked, it affects me too. It affects my hearing and it's going to affect my response to you. So masking affects different parts of your life at different times. And we have to understand that even us, the physical mask, you see how hindered we were and how hampered we couldn't speak. People couldn't hear us. We couldn't breathe.
difficult.
Right, it was difficult to breathe because the mask is by itself a hindrance.
Exactly.
And so when we are in an abusive situation, also we have to understand that if we are masked, we can't breathe. It's like we are suffocating, we're dying silently because what is happening to us is killing us, and we are not able to express ourselves. We're not able to stand up. We're not able to speak out. And we're not able to sometimes say to others, this is how I am feeling. So masking is something that we have to take off and do away with.
Okay. And when we speak about masking, we don't expect it to just happen at one go or suddenly. Yes, it can happen suddenly because we believe in the power of the Holy Spirit. And we believe that God is able to. But as we go through and unravel and strip away and remove the pain, sometimes it becomes a little painful. But ultimately, the objective is to heal the wound. And as we speak about unmasking, and we spend a little time talking about unmasking, because very often the situation is so grave that persons do not want to go back into unmasking the pain. But in order to be healed, you have to unmask the pain. Think about you having some kind of wound and you go to the doctor and the surgeon decides that, well, I have to, in order for me to assist you, I'll have to remove all of the layers that are hidden here and causing the infection. And so I can clean it and prepare it and then to put the necessary healing on it, medication. It's the same way with the unmasking of the wound, of the pain. We have to allow the situation to unmask it little by little as we deal with the situation. However, as we unmask, we speak about emotional unmasking, and that one can cause mental illness.
Yes, it can, and it can also cause depression. It can lead to suicidal tendencies.
Right.
It can lead to self-destruction and also destruction of others.
Others too.
Right, and so it can lead to insomnia, sleepless nights, and to sometimes days. And it can lead to just about
poor appetite.
Yes.
You can end up either overeating or undereating.
Yes.
Right? It can also lead to emotionally, you can find yourself very hungry at persons and society, and also at the persons that are close. You mentioned that earlier, you might get very angry to persons who are close to you. You can become very rebellious because you say, listen, if this didn't work, I put everything in it, then you're going to snap. It can cause a lot of emotional issues. It can become so hurt that even that hurt makes you feel that it affects your self-esteem.
Yes,
And your self-confidence, and you don't believe that you belong in either this environment anymore because of the shame that sometimes comes with it.
And sometimes society does not understand what people go through when they are emotionally hurt. And sometimes persons tend to add to the wound by the things they say, because sometimes society is very unkind. And persons don't understand that when somebody has an emotional trauma, how traumatized those persons are. And so we have to understand that we're in a situation where persons may not be readily helpful to you sometimes they don't know what you're going through, and sometimes you just feel that you can just snap out of it, and it doesn't necessarily happen like that. You don't necessarily can just snap out of things like that. Sometimes it takes a while. You describe the wound, and even when the doctor is going through that wound and peering away and scraping, it hurts even more, right? So when you go to get counseling, and the counselor is asking you some things, and you have to remember, and you have to dig up, and you have to tell the counselor or share with the counselor, because the counselor is just there to help you, right? You have to find your own solutions. So while the counselor is asking you a number of questions, and then you remember, it becomes very painful. And sometimes people might not come to the second or the third counseling because there's so much pain there, and some of them say, okay, I want to get over this, and so let me endure, because once I get over this hump, I'll be able to deal with it. Right?
True.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. And the emotional pain, I know we spoke about the physical pain, and sometimes people are left with scars, physical scars, that even after they have been healed, the scars are there to remind them about that they actually went through that. But even another of the emotional pain that you go through is, as I mentioned, and this is something that we just want to talk about a little, the mental condition, because in this space you become to even think that you're losing your mind mentally. Because this person begin to, if you're in an abusive situation, and I also refer to the matter of gaslighting, where in gaslighting you think, and sometimes people don't even recognize that that is actually a form of abuse, that is an emotional abuse, because you're being gaslighted and don't even realize. When somebody say to you that you might be coming home, I often use this example, I'm going to stop and get something for myself or myself and the children, and should I get something for you? And you said, no, it's okay, just get for yourself or you and the children. But the minute you walked in, the person begins to play on your mind. How come you stay so bad? Why didn't you get something from me? And you start to question your own mental sanity.
Did I hear correctly?
Did I hear correctly? Yes. Am I losing it? And then you start to go over in your mind. And we want to encourage women. So it takes a toll on you mentally. It can impact on your ability to keep your job, your employment. It can impact on you be able to do well in an interview because you're going and not feeling confident that you're able to do well. So we talk about spiritual though. What about the spiritual component of abuse? How does it impact on us as we unmask the pain as spiritual as we impact spiritually?
Sister Althea, this is one area that we are afraid to touch, the spiritual abuse, because spiritual abuse comes in so many ways. It can come from the leadership perspective. It can come from the spouse as well, using scriptures to keep you in a subjective position. And so as a woman and somebody within the church, you find that spiritual abuse is used quite often, more often than we may think, to keep women in submission, quote-unquote submission. And I realize that people are saying that women are not supposed to be in leadership roles, women are not to be this, women are supposed to be submissive, women are helpmeets, and not understanding the spiritual context in which some of these things were said. Persons within the church, men sometimes use it against women to keep them submissive. The Bible said that you are to be submissive and you're to submit yourself to me. And these are some of the words, the things that we have to look into. For example, even in Genesis, the word Asa, helpmeet. Some think you're a washing machine. You're supposed to be cooking, cleaning, and doing all of these. Asa does not mean that you're a helper. It actually means you come alongside. It's a military term. So it's almost like the song that they sing, I am the wind beneath your wings. It's actually a wind beneath the wings. So the word Asa means that I am supporting you and I am standing by you and I'm supporting you. It doesn't necessarily mean washing, cooking, and cleaning. Although these are roles that we have to perform, but it doesn't mean that I am your helper. You understand? And so we have to understand that. There are some words that Paul also uses when he was addressing certain situations within the church, and people sometimes take that out of context. For example, Paul was addressing one church and he spoke about three things. He said, when you prophesy, you are to prophesy two or three, and you're supposed to have the prophecies checked. Talk about speaking in tongues. If you speak in tongues, there must be an interpreter. And the third thing Paul spoke about was that women were to keep silent. It's not that women don't have a voice and they were to remain silent. It was within the context of women disrupting the church service. So what Paul was doing was bringing order to the church in those three instances: prophecy, speaking in tongues, and women behaving within the context of order within the church. But that has been taken out of context to mean some churches do it, women are not allowed to speak, and even within the home sometimes you find that women don't have a voice because they are supposed to be so submissive that if the man says jump, you say, oh, hi, right? And that was not the intent and purpose of the scriptures or the intent of purpose that the Lord had for us.
Preacher Jennifer. But I just speak about the spiritual matter of abuse, I'm here listening and I'm saying, but what about those, we're in church and I'm on the choir, or I'm a worship leader, or a deaconess in the church, and I can't go and tell anybody that I'm in an abusive relationship.
No, you can't do that, especially if the husband is in the church and he's in a leadership role. And so you grin and you bear it, and that's where some of the masking comes in. You grin and bear because you dare not say anything bad about your husband in church, because furthermore, they will come down on you. Even some of the women too. You think it's just men? Some of the women to know you're supposed to keep your house business private. And so if you're suffering in silence. The lady once told me once that she had some young boys, and the husband was up there singing in his robe, and she had to take care of these three boys. Little boys were going all over the place, under the seat and everywhere. And she said, I wonder if my husband sits standing up there singing with the hymnal, if he doesn't see me trying to just control these three boys. She said, could he just come down 1 or 2 Sundays and assist me? No, he was there singing and he was performing his role, and she was trying to mother and father at the same. That's a kind of abuse. Well, he didn't slap her or did anything to her emotionally, but the fact that she had to nurture these boys by herself while the man was up there singing with no help at all, he left the core responsibilities of training, even within church, on the mother alone. And so you find that apart from that instance, women are up there singing, but sometimes they are crying. They go home and they cry. They sing and they perform and they go to the prayer meeting and then serve the communion and they do everything. And they go back home and cry because the situations at home is sometimes unbearable. And especially if you're the pastor's wife, you can't talk about it. Oh, dare you talk about pastor like that, sister? No, you can't do that. And so there's this silence and this hush-hush again within the church community where abuse is concerned. Nobody wants to know because they want the church to look good. And then people to say, well, this is a good church or this is a good couple. And so women suffer in silence even within a religious context.
You mentioned suffer in silence, but we want to encourage our sisters out there. If you're listening to us, we know you're listening. But you might be saying, okay, you have said a lot and I'm suffering in silence. You don't have to suffer in silence. We have a safe space. There is a safe space that you can always reach out to share your story, so we can help to break the silence, break the cycle, unmask the pain, and heal the wound. We encourage you to call us 876-522-4030. We are willing to work with you to unmask the pain, heal the wound. You don't have to suffer in silence. The Lord do not want us to suffer in silence. If he had, he wouldn't have encouraged us and reminded us, according to Psalms 139, verse 14, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are his works, and that my soul knoweth right well. If it's a case that he wanted us, he wouldn't be telling us how beautiful we are. So we don't need to walk around feeling ugly, feeling hurt, feeling bitter. We need to know that we have a place, an anchor that is safe and secure. God loves us so much. He sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die for us. If God loves us so much, to the point that he sent his son, Sister Jennifer, to die for us, it means that why would we subject ourselves to abuse? It means that we are not accepting the love of God. Or we are saying the love of God doesn't make me complete. I want to encourage our sisters, you don't need to do that. Also in the book of 3 John, I just need to confirm that scripture. Give me a minute. Yeah, I think it says,
Not the one that said me love it up.
I wish above all things that you being good.
Prosper and
3 John, don't it?
be in good health, even as your soul prospers.
Yeah,
That one.
Yes, Sister Jennifer, go ahead and share the scripture. You know that one?
Yeah, the scripture says, I wish above all things that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. It therefore means that the Lord wants us to prosper in all aspects and all areas of our lives, and that includes the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, and if there are other aspects, he also wants us to prosper in these ways as well.
3 John 1. 3 John verse 2. Right. 3 John 1 verse 2. So I want us to know that we don't need to, the Lord don't want us to be subject to that situation. And that is why we are embarking on this campaign. This campaign that we believe will edify us, empower us, restore us, refresh us, and renew us for God's glory. It will enable us to break the silence, because if each one of us stand up and speak out, can you imagine the multitude of us? There'll be no stigma attached anymore. There'll be no need to feel that you are alone on this journey. There's one chase 1,000 and two 10,000 to flight. So if we have 2 and 3 and 10, can you imagine how we will put this matter, this abuse situation to flight? And we're going to unmask the pain and heal the wound. Talk a little about healing the wound as we wrap up this discussion.
Okay, healing the wounds can take place in a number of ways. One, it might be getting counseling, and you know about that as well. Counseling can help to heal the wounds. Another thing that can help is deliverance, because sometimes people need deliverance. The pain and the hurt and the situation is so deeply ingrained in the person's life that you can get deliverance. Another thing in terms of healing the wound is to point people in the direction where help can be found.
Exactly.
And Women's Oasis Ministries might not be able to do everything, but they can point you to a counselor. They can point you to the law. There's a law, right? A Domestic Violence Act, of course, that provides provisions for women who are both men and women. It's not gender specific, but women need to know that there are remedies under the law that can help them. They can know the law. It has a protection order. It has an ancillary order. It has an occupation order. At least those 3 orders are provided within the Domestic Violence Act within Jamaica. So also there was the Women's Crisis Center, and the government has now acquired some shelters as well. And so if you don't know where these shelters are and you call Women's Oasis Ministries, we will have that information as part of the campaign to give to you, so that you can know that if you have to run out the house, these are where the shelters are, and they do now provide information, not just information, but help. I was able to get some assistance recently for somebody who was actually put out of her house, and somebody all the way from Mandeville called me, and I was able to call somebody, and the person contacted, and I got a good report that the person was helped. So there is help.
Yeah,
so don't feel alone. Don't feel that you are on your own and you can't get any help at all. You just have to know where the help is, and sometimes the help might cut across different spaces. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it might be Women's Oasis Ministries. Sometimes it might be what the government is offering. Sometimes it might be other places, even within a workshop, a seminar, a webinar setting. Some persons can learn from that and, of course, get help, and they know that they have a voice, and there are other persons who are also helping them to stand up and speak out.
Wonderful. Sister Jennifer, anything as we wrap up? Anything you want to add that we believe that we need to just share at this point as we wrap up this discussion? Of course, we're going to be having, stay tuned with us. We're going to be having more of these sessions as part of our campaign. But Sister Jennifer, you have the final word.
I just want to say that violence against women is very pervasive. Almost 1 in 3 women in her lifetime, or women in her lifetime, has suffered some kind of either sexual or physical abuse. Women within the 15 to 49 age group, again, that's a very vulnerable age. They suffer, I think it's about 27% of women in that age group suffer in an abusive relationship. And we also want persons to know that while these things are happening, there are agencies that can assist you. For example, Women's Oasis Ministries. This campaign is actually to augment what is already out there. People are already doing this thing, and this thing has been going on for a very long time. Well, Women's Oasis Ministries want to add their voice to the voices out there to say, we also want to join in this campaign of against violence against women, and we want to stand up with you, we want to speak out with you, we want to show solidarity with you, and we want you as women to be helped, and we want the girl children as well, or the girl child to be helped as well, because there are a number, I've dealt with a number of girls talking to them across the island, and I realize that more are affected than we think. And so we want the girl child to feel that there's a space also for her, and that she too can benefit from this campaign.
Mm-hmm. And I know that's your final word, but just to say, that violence against women is unacceptable. And my dear sister, it's never your fault. Do not take responsibility and carry it around as something that you did something wrong. It's not your fault, and do not accept responsibility. Because the abuser might say, oh, you did that. That's why I did that. It's you. Or speak to you in that matter, or shove you. No, it's not your fault. So don't sit and cry and say, oh, I did this. I didn't cook the dinner properly. Or it was late. Or I didn't clean the shoes. Or I didn't put the pants out.
Or stay too long at church.
It's not your fault. Or you stay too long at church. It's not your fault. It's never your fault. Do not take responsibility. Stand up.
Speak out.
Thank you.
End violence against women and girls.
Thank you.